Jack here with a quick instructional video for today. What we're focusing on today is how to get a really cool anchor setup for your freediving floats. So when I'm going out here, diving in my local spots here, there's a couple of really nice places where we can go and actually practice our freediving. Not super deep locations, but if you set a line there, you're guaranteed to find some really nice marine life. It's a really nice protected bay. There's not too much swell coming in there. So it's actually a really good spot to set up a line and also introduce people to freediving. The downside of these areas is that it can be quite a bit of a tidal current. You are exposed to the open sea, so things are going to be moving around quite a bit. Now, with a standard freediving line, this means that you're going to be either drifting into the bay or drifting out of the bay. You're going to potentially be dealing with that. What some people do to get around this is they'll drop their line all the way out, just have an open line, use the weight, just let it drop into the bottom, and just let it drag along the bottom, sort of acting as a bit of a pseudo anchor. Downsides of this is your line's going to be on a bit of an angle all the time as it gets pulled along. And what's also a big problem is just the environmental aspect. You're dragging a weight along the bottom. It's just causing damage potentially to any marine vegetation, any other marine life that might be hanging around, and you're just dragging a weight across the top of it essentially, which is not an ideal thing. You know, we want to be going out there and leaving very minimal trace of us being out there, or none at all if possible. So what we're going to be aiming to do with this setup is just keep it as simple as, keep it lightweight, and make it really easy to set up. So what I've got here, got my basic freediving float. For this setup you do need two of these. One of these will be holding the main line, so your actual diving line with your bottom weights and bottom plates, and that's going to be completely independent. I'm going to have a little bit of rope tied off, and it's going to be connected to a second one of these, and that's going to be having my anchoring setup inside of it. Now for the anchoring setup, I'm going to be using this little silver rope here. So I always carry about 25-30 meters of the silver rope in the line there, just a bit extra just in case I need to let some more out. But for the most part, I'm setting this setup in no more than 25 meters for this one. So it's a really easy setup. This rope is perfectly fine for your anchoring line. You don't need to get some big heavy freediving line for it. This stuff's also pretty cheap as well, so it actually saves a bit on the actual size of the setup. And what I'm also going to need is I'm going to need an actual anchor to actually anchor myself to the bottom. So I'm going to be using this one here. This is what's called a Cooper anchor. So the Cooper anchor is a standard nylon anchor. It's really simple. It doesn't really look much, but this thing actually is really effective at what it does. Now the benefits of this is there's a little weight just in the point right here. So if it drops down to the bottom, it's on its back, it doesn't matter. You start pulling it along, it'll automatically flip over, pull into the bottom. It's a really, really nifty little setup. It's really lightweight, which is what's appealing for me. They use this a lot for sea kayaks, jet skis, light watercraft. It's just a really simple setup, and it does a fantastic job of holding the whole float system into the bottom. And as you start pulling it along, it just starts dredging itself down to the sand until it locks off. Shackled onto the back of this, I've just got my little silver rope. So I've got about 2 meters of that set up, just to give plenty of space along the edge there. That means there's any bouncing around or any jumping around, it's not going to immediately yank it out of the way. It's got a little bit more space to move with this extra rope on the end here. Attached to the end of that, before I get to the bottom weight, I'm going to have a little bit of chain. So I've got about a meter of chain here. Really simple, easy explanation for this one. It's going to help keep everything weighted down to the bottom. So if there's any sideways pull from any of this current or surge pushing along, it doesn't mean it's going to lift the anchor straight out of the sand. This will help it keep pulling along in a horizontal. So if there's anything that's going to be heavier surge or a really strong current, this is going to keep it all locked down to the bottom. It reduces the chance of the anchor getting pulled free by a big surging wave. So onto the bottom of this, I'm going to be clipping a small bottom weight. So usually I'm just using a similar setup I use for my freediving float weights. It will just be 4 3-pound weights in a little sling with a carabiner, and that will be clipped on to another big length of this silver line, which is going to be going straight back up to the surface. So what you're going to end up with is your anchor, silver rope, going onto your chain, connected to a bottom weight, and then that's going to be connected to your float on the surface. And that float on the surface is tied off to my main line, and from there I can just drop my dive line down and it can just be free in the water. The main benefit of this is you'll end up with a dead straight line, and it will not be touching into the bottom, damaging any other areas around it. And once this thing sets in, if you're in a really easy spot to set up and there's not massive surge and swell hitting you, it shouldn't move at all. Once it locks in, you're there for the entire session. So it's a really good way to set a spot, and if you found that nice sweet spot you want to set up, you might have found a nice little area to dive in that's really easy to set up on. Once you're there, you're there. You're not going to be moving at all. So it's a really easy way to set this up. Once you've got it all clipped together and you get the general gist of it, it's just as easy as setting up a regular dive float. When I've got it stored away inside the float, I do have it inside one of these little mesh baggies here. So that just all zips up, sits inside the float. That way I don't end up with this nice little sharp point on the front here, potentially puncturing my air bladder inside. Last thing I want is to have that happen, so that's why I keep it all locked away in a bag like that. That just prevents any unfortunate accidents while I'm out there in the water. But yeah, benefits of this setup: lightweight, simple, it's really effective at handling most conditions. Downsides are you do need to have that extra float, but for the added benefit of if you're out there teaching and you've got a group anyway, it's a resting buoy for your students. So you've got it all set up along the surface there, everyone can hang off. Or if you're just diving with a bunch of mates, they can hang out and chill out there in between their dives. You can put water bottles and other stuff in that anchoring buoy when you're not diving. It's a really simple, easy setup to have there. The main fallback with this is that it's not for all conditions in the ocean. If you've got big swells and really crazy heavy currents, big full moon currents pushing along areas, you may potentially start to get moved around. This will handle most light and medium days out there. If you've also got big crashing waves over the top of you, you should be fine. This thing's, I've taken it out already in pretty decent swell and surge, and it just sits there and just locks into the bottom, and once I'm there, I'm not moving at all. So yeah, that pretty much covers it. It's a really simple one for today. If you have any questions about how the setup works, or you need to see any more info, I'll be doing a bit of a write-up on the website so you can see a bit more of a step-by-step on how it's put together and what the pictures look like and how the actual setup goes. But apart from that, yeah, that's it for today. So yeah, have a good one, and good luck with building your own anchor setup. Cheers.